We've all been tricked, fooled, and quite possibly bamboozled. Something that once seemed like it was telling us simple facts about the world of Girls und Panzer was, in fact, a government psyop. From a certain point of view, at least. So how were we conned for years? Some for more than a decade, and what are the implications of that? Let's talk about it. This week's video is brought to you by my upcoming original manga, Amaranth Angels. You anime girls, starfighters, and exciting space battles. Written by Girls und Panzer fan and for other fans of Girls und Panzer and the military moe genre in general. The full first volume is coming out later this year, and I now have a pre-order store live for anyone who missed the Kickstarter campaign. Now, onto the video. So was the video title a little hyperbolic? Maybe a bit, but not by all that much. For more than a decade now, at least for fans who are there since episode 1, Girls und Panzer completely fooled us all, regarding one major aspect of its setting. And only very recently with the release of the Taisho War OVA was this fact fully revealed to us. Though, with the benefit now of hindsight, perhaps it shouldn't have been quite as much of a surprise. Obviously, spoilers ahead, so if you haven't watched the newest OVA yet, be warned. Now, as with so much else in the series, it ultimately comes back to the actions of these three individuals. The student council themselves, at least in an in-universe sense. As you've already guessed from the thumbnail, presumably, it all comes back to the important, infamous senhado propaganda video from episode 1. A video which, at first, seemed like either just a bit of a gag parroting real-life propaganda of the 20th century, and or a quick way to get some world building across as the plot moved along. Well, it turned out to be something much different. Probably the part that most viewers remember most are the lines about how senhado will make the competitors ideal women, perfect wives and mothers and all that. I think most, if not all of us, on first watch at least, just took it at face value. After all, the inherent premise of Girls und Panzer is, on paper, ridiculous. So it would follow that an in-universe aspect of it is that people see senhado as a path to womanly virtue. And there have been many reviewers who, when talking about Girls und Panzer, clearly also took this at face value and used it as part of their criticism of the show's setting. But that video isn't quite what it seemed, and while it took until recently to get more confirmation of that, the hints were there all along. It all started for me when I eventually realized that it was Yuzu providing the narration for it. That immediately meant that this was something the student council put together as part of their desperate recruiting campaign, and not some archival video they dug out of a closet to put on the projector. Furthermore, as we progressed through Season 1 and their film, we learned quite a bit about what senhado means to many of the competitors. Yes, it's more than just a sport to them. They learn life lessons from it, and tie good senhado sportsmanship to being a good person generally. And it's obviously also means of finding new friends. But no one really ever mentions the womanly virtues the video implied senhado provided, did they? Of course, that wouldn't have been something we were likely to pick up on while watching Season 1, now with all the tank action and more to focus on. And by the time we reached their film and Das finale, it had all faded into the background, until now. We brought it back to the beginning in the Taisho War OVA, when, while the commanders were trying to figure out ways to get more young people interested in senhado, Miho helpfully suggested watching the video that Ori had shown, to Momo's clear dismay.
In the business, we call this foreshadowing.
And the result was an amazing reaction image. The other commanders, Nishi aside, bless her heart, seemed to universally react to the video with utter shock. They were a mix of completely dumbfounded and horrified. Anchovy even drops her fork, she's so stunned. And they're shocked that it inspired anyone to join Ori's senhado team. From their point of view, it's complete cringe. And even Momo and Miho seem a bit embarrassed by it. So from this, it explains that at least some of the assumptions many people, including those reviewers, after all, this is how the girls who dedicated their lives to the sport of senhado react to that faux propaganda video, were wrong. It can't actually be true in universe. So what this means is that the video is entirely fabricated by the student council as part of their desperate ploy to put together a team. As I mentioned earlier, it was narrated by Yuzu, and it now seems that they basically took some archival footage, or even possibly modern footage, and ran it through a filter, to make the video. Like this was part of the student council's scattershot attempt to cast the widest possible net when promoting senhado, alongside those many other incentives they promised during the assembly, hoping that each would draw in some people. And when you really think about it, this also explains, at least in part, why it didn't do its job that well. Sure, it probably convinced Sayori, and maybe the first years to join, but there were a lot of girls in that auditorium watching, and despite that, and the massive senhado incentives, the student council only pulled in enough for 4 tank crews at first. Also, that almost foreshadows the very purpose of the Taisho War meeting. Younger generations are apparently less interested in senhado, and it's been a challenge to convince them to take up the sport. The lack of response from Ori's appeal back in Season 1 could certainly be seen as an example of this. So, looking back, I find it funny how the video didn't really play well to people in-universe, but to us, out-of-universe, we accepted it wholesale, and came away with an incorrect impression. Yes, there are obviously things about Girls und Panzer that are silly on paper, but this isn't one of them. Senhado would have had to become a girls only sport for some other reason in universe, though it really doesn't matter why as far as the story itself is concerned. It's also possible that that was true in the early days of senhado, but now, in the present, that idea has kind of fallen away. Without direct comments from the creators, there's probably no way to tell for sure whether this was the intention from the start, or if this was only conceived as a funny gag during the creation of Das Finale 4. But it does show that a great deal of thought has been put into the setting. And if this was planned from the start, given the little hints I mentioned already, that's definitely a distinct possibility. It was a brilliant long con, since I don't think anyone saw this coming as the punchline when we first saw that reaction image ahead of the OVA's release. Just like none of those poor commanders knew what was coming when they agreed to watch the video. It was just a really fun callback to something from the start of the series, which adds extra layers to both the infamous video itself and to the world of Girls Und Panzer as a whole. I guess the lesson here is not to believe everything you see on TV. Did you also take the senhado propaganda video purely at face value at the start? Or did you question some aspects of it from the beginning? Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video and like to support me in what I do here, my books and light novels are all available on Amazon. And you can get early access to videos, sneak peeks and updates on my upcoming manga and other projects by subscribing over on Patreon. I also offer channel memberships now, which get you access to monthly members-only watch-along streams. And as always, if you have any thoughts on this video or there's anything Girls Und Panzer related you'd like me to talk about, definitely share them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear them, and while I might not get to respond to every comment, at least not in a timely manner, I can guarantee that I read each of them. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss any future uploads. That's all for now, so until next time.